Hey everybody, this is Brandusius Maximus.
And I'm Kev.
And welcome to 315 Dming. Today's topic, what is the most powerful weapon in the Player's Handbook? Raised eyebrow. Alrighty, so what is truly the most powerful weapon in the Player's Handbook? Maybe you know, maybe you don't know. But when it comes to sheer power and power gamer performance, the winner is, drumroll, the Scythe. Uncontested layup to the basket, sploosh! The Scythe is the most powerful. And for those of you who don't agree, I will let Maestro over here explain the details.
Thank you. So, indeed, the reason why it is the best weapon is not because of its measly 2d4 base damage, just the fact that it has the massive ×4 critical. That's what makes this weapon the most god destruction weapon there is. And that's just the icing to the cake. So you know what? I'll explain it to you guys here. So based on this chart, we're going to use the 3 strength values to show the range of the top tier weapons based off ×2, ×3, and ×4 critical multipliers. First strength value is 10. As you can see, at 10 strength, the Great Axe and the Great Sword deal more damage at base. But when you get to critical hit side of things, we get a little bit more interesting results, where the Scythe almost matches the Great Axe for max damage and completely outclasses the Great Sword for max damage. Now let's bump these strength scores up to 18, and we see a much closer gap between the damages of the great weapons compared to the Scythe for base damage. But when you get to the critical hits, everything changes. Not only does the Scythe have a higher minimum damage on a critical hit, it actually has a higher maximum damage on a critical hit compared to the Great Axe, and the Scythe's minimum damage on a critical is almost higher than the maximum range of the Great Sword. So with that, let's make things more interesting by cranking up the strength to 30, which is entirely possible within the first 20 levels of gameplay without having to absurdly optimize a quote-unquote strength build. Once again, we see that the gap for the base damage is very close, with only 4 points lower for the Scythe base damage as compared to the great weapons. And then we get to the critical hit side of things, and damn does it get scary. Not only does the Scythe have an overwhelmingly higher minimum damage, but the gap between the Great Axe and the Scythe has widened, within the Scythe taking the lead, no sweat. And look at this pitiful damage output for the Great Sword. I mean, the Great Sword's maximum damage is lower than the Scythe's minimum damage by a fair margin. So with this, we can see the pattern is starting to happen where the higher your strength gets, the bigger the gap on your damage output will be with the Scythe, and with the Scythe zooming into the top slot with no competition. And do you know what the best part about the Scythe is? Since 3.5, it has a martial weapon proficiency, just like the Great Axe and Great Sword. God only knows why it's promoted from exotic weapon to a martial weapon. Friggin' lol.
And that's not all, folks. This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to multi-plane conquering power. So now let's add some burst abilities to this weapon and see how Zenny can really become. So insert chart 2, hard cut 5. So for this chart, we decided to use a legal, non-epic +10 weapon with enhancement bonus of +1 with the 3 burst elements. Thundering and Holy for the last ones. Originally Holy was going to be Bane, but Bane is so situational and no doubt you'll be battling evil baddies more often than not, so we went with Holy instead. With that being said, let's look at our 18 strength chart. As per usual, base damage is quite similar, although at a wide range because of all the elemental damage. But then, when we get to the critical hit portion of the show, it's a completely different story. Just at 18 measly strength, this +10 Scythe can almost deal 200 damage on a critical hit, where the Great Axe and especially the Great Sword aren't even close. Then you crank the strength up to 30 and good game, man. The Scythe starts pumping out over 200 damage on criticals, while the Great Axe does okay with its 172 max, not bad. And then the laughable Great Sword barely at best dealing over 100 damage. Keep in mind, this is also without feats or abilities that will help you deal even more damage, like weapon specialization, for example, making the gaps even further. Now, one caveat of this whole comparison is that the Great Swords will get critical hits more often, dealing higher damage on average. But in the long scheme of things, it's complete wank, basically. It eventually gets to the point where Scythe will start dealing more than double the damage on of a greatsword and a critical hit, making even a higher chance of criticals from greatswords completely moot.
Alright, with that being said, thanks for watching. Make sure to give us a like, dislike, whichever you want. Don't forget to subscribe, put the bell icon on, make sure you know when our videos are coming out, and we'll see you guys in the next video.
Right arm!